Hey everyone, on today's episode, Chris and I are talking all about how to sell an identity. It's pretty interesting, but it's the best one yet. Check it out. So Chris, what we're talking about today is identity selling.
Okay.
In your mind, what is identity selling?
Selling a new identity. That's what my first thing comes to mind.
That's all it is. Super easy.
All right. So next podcast.
All right, done. So identity selling. Here's essentially what it is. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, first off, what it is. Then we're going to talk about how we do it. Then we're going to talk about how you do it yourself. Right? We talk a lot about transformation and this and that, but this is going to dive one layer deeper into all of that. All right. So identity selling is that same thing. It's selling a new identity. And when you think of identity, this is really like who you are, what you're all about. Like Chris, if I just ask you a vague question of, Chris, what's your identity? How do you answer that?
I'm a barrel-chested freedom fighter who drives a Kia.
Okay. That's who Chris identifies with.
I guess I would say I'm a protector. I love service. I'm passionate, and very, very. I would say a family man.
Okay. And the idea of selling an identity is we're now diving layers deeper into what it is that people really want.
Yeah.
So people buy for one of three reasons. And there's like different people say different things, but it's health, wealth, relationships. Do you want to be skinnier? Do you want to be bigger? Whatever it is. Do you want to be healthier? Do you want to make more money? Or do you want relationships? Could be better family time. It could be status, like how you want other people to view you. Do you want to get into the upper echelons of society? That's what relationships, that's how that kind of comes about.
Gotcha.
So when we sell, we essentially want to figure out, is one of those three bigger than the other two, or is it a combination? But there's typically like all three come into it at some point. Now, with the contracting world and what we do, there's not so much health, but what we sell essentially is wealth and relationships.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, what most people do is they simply just sell their product or their service or whatever it is. Now, when you can sell a new identity, this is a new person that you're becoming. And I know it's kind of a vague, high-level concept, but if you can sell somebody a new identity, then a new identity of who they want to become as a person, it's so much easier to actually get your foot in the door.
And when I hear that, you talk about selling a new identity, I think that it's very important to ask people their goals. And from my perspective, right? Not in every scenario, but from my perspective, it's super important for me to ask people their goals and talk about how they see themselves in that 12-month or 18-month time frame. Mm-hmm. Because then we kind of backtrack through who they are right now, and then recognizing that there's got to be a jump to actually get them to that new identity that they want to have. When they talk about spending more time with their family or getting the revenue goals that they want, having the amount of crews that they want, accomplishing these certain tasks, that is their new identity. Their new identity is someone who, doesn't, chase after people anymore, is actually being able to have jobs come into them that they're kind of picking and choosing from. So I think a big part for me in my sales process is understanding the people's overall goals so that they can paint the picture of their new identity. We have a clear understanding together, and then we talk about how we can get them to that new identity.
So let me pivot around from this then, because let's first talk about how this works in the contracting world, then we'll talk about how it works in our world.
Sounds good.
So in the contracting world, why does somebody get a new kitchen? Why does somebody get their kitchen remodeled into an open concept kitchen?
Simply put, because of the fact that an open concept kitchen allows for more opportunities with family. You can engage with people while they cook, and also, it's now the identity is, hey, if I sit there and imagine right now, I see a dog running around the house, I see a rug, I see a couch, I see a TV mounted on the wall, and I look to my right and I see a kitchen that's still open that's there. I've walking from the kitchen, from that island, bringing it over to sit on the couch, watch the game, watch the Super Bowl, enjoy time with family. That's what I see.
And essentially what you're doing as a kitchen remodeling company is you're allowing them more time to be with family. Now, to take that one step deeper, is what you're helping them do is you're helping them transform their identity as a family. Because before you, they're a family that's very isolated and they're on their phones a lot and they're very much in their own world, in their own screens, all that stuff. But after you, the new identity of the family is one that hangs out and enjoys each other's company.
I can 100% resonate with that.
So you're what you're doing is you're actually, as a contractor, you're shifting the dynamic of the family.
So recently, right now, living in the apartment, no counter space. Megan absolutely hates coming over to come over because it sucks to cook there, right? When we go and cook at her house, it's a totally different situation where we have all the counter space. We're actually preparing together. And that new identity is the fact that we enjoy cooking together. Mm-hmm. That's something that we set out certain days that we're going to do that together. That is our new identity. That we now have built memories on, cooking this, quinoa dish, cooking this couscous dish, cooking this, this pasta shells dish. Like that is very much why when we're buying this new house, it is, we had different options on different layouts, and that it was paramount to have two things. One, have an office in the, that's great, but two, have an open concept so that the kitchen is something that we've now started to make memories in together at our home right now. We can continue that on so that we are actually cooking together on a regular basis, and that's just part of who we are.
So if you had to put a label on your relationship when you're in your apartment versus a label on your relationship when you'll be in your new home, what do both of those look like?
If I could just kind of simply put it, I'd say confined.
In the first or second one?
And when I'm in my apartment, it's confined. I don't have the ability to have those kind of situations. I mean, I borderline annoy her when I have so little counter space for us to do anything. We're in the kitchen together, we're like stumbling over each other, and it's just not fun. It's like, well, it's more of a chore to cook at that point. But when we're able to like laugh and joke and like run past each other and flick flour in each other's faces and like have a good little time while we cook, like that's actually something that we enjoy to do. We created something together, and we were able to enjoy that after we created this together versus it being just a burden to kind of cook so we can sit down and watch some TV.
And this is all like domino and like snowball effect of like, a little problem turns into a big one and it spills over. But like if there was somebody like a fly on the wall in your apartment when you guys try to cook, what would they say about your relationship?
That we're both irritable.
Yeah. And then if a fly on the wall in the new house, what would they say about their relationship?
They're loving.
Yeah. So that's the identity that we're talking about here, is that you're essentially, yes, you're putting in a kitchen, yes, you're buying back family time and all that stuff, but to go even like a layer deeper, it's all about creating, we're a family that hangs out together. And like there's a guy in my gym, I was talking to him today, and what he does is once a month, he and his wife, they have a son and a daughter, and he's like, yeah, especially with like COVID, the kids just like, they're always around each other, they're always with the, both of us parents. Like what we both like to do is we'll separately each take one of the kids out once a month. So it's like he was like, last night we had father-son time. Yeah. And he was like, it was awesome. And I was like, I thought about it. I was like, that's what my family did growing up was we had a 6-year-old trip. And what a 6-year-old trip looked like was you as a kid would go by yourself with dad somewhere. And then at 12-year-old trip, that was when you by yourself went on a trip with mom. And it was super cool because I like, as soon as I heard him talk about like, yeah, once a month we do that. And I was like, oh shit, this is what my family did. Yeah. And it builds up this relationship of like, we are a close-knit family because of little things like that. So yes, it's family time, but it's really like if you look at my family from the outside in, you would say like, wow, that's a very close-knit family because we really are. And little things like that build into this domino effect of creating a close-knit family, and that's what we're talking about here. So when you do your marketing and you use storytelling and you talk about some of the clients that you've helped in the past, if you strictly talk about, oh, let me run through the backsplash. Let me tell you about the recessed lighting that we did in their house. How, when you hear me say stuff like that, how emotional, how impactful is that in your heart versus, hey, we helped a family become a close-knit family. When that's the case, think of that snowball, that domino effect of domino 1, new kitchen, domino 2, close-knit family, domino 3, whatever happens after that. I mean, you've essentially created a brand new identity, a brand new culture, a brand new everything dynamic for this family.
And when I think about the identity, obviously for the family, but let's go back to the contractor for a second. Maybe because I just got off of several sales calls very recently, but I think about the idea of when you have a different identity, there's different things that you allow.
Walk me through that. That's totally true.
So, I mean, I'm trying to think of examples in my head, and I don't know why, but the first thing that came to my mind was Mr. T.
Okay. I mean, Mr. T does not allow fools.
Yeah, exactly. So, I pity the fool, but the reality is there's certain things, Mr. T, Mike Tyson, that I wouldn't do to them. I couldn't imagine myself speaking to Mike Tyson in a certain way. I couldn't imagine myself not valuing, certain people's time. I couldn't imagine myself, lying or, to my father. I couldn't imagine myself, not being forthright with someone that I really trusted and that I really valued. So when you have this new identity, you're not going to allow certain stuff anymore. You're not going to allow different things because, I've heard this time and time again, and sometimes I have a little hard time understanding it and really digesting it. But, you only get what you allow is what I hear sometimes. And so if you consistently get this, it's because you are potentially allowing it. And your new identity, or the true identity, maybe even better so, is what's going to reflect that stuff that you don't allow. Like, if you're my friend, if you were doing certain things to me, like I would stop allowing it. That's not the kind of guy I am. So I think that there's a lot of power in that, just as much as giving the homeowner a new identity for how they can live their life. But you, as a contractor, having a certain identity because you are the leader at that point. When you're the leader, and that's your identity as a leader, then people are going to follow your process. When you are the leader, people are going to understand, hey, this person gave me a price, and okay, that makes sense. For what he is going to provide, that's what that cost. When you are a leader, you don't have head trash about having your prices on your own, website. So I think that identity is very important, not only for the homeowner, but it's super, maybe even more important in this conversation for that contractor about what they will allow.
Yeah, and I really think that the more that I think about what you're saying and stuff like that, I think the easier pitch here is like you're changing the family culture, because we always talk about what's the culture at work, what's the culture of this football team. How often do you hear people talk about or associate what's your family culture like?
I don't think I've ever heard that before.
I've never heard that either, right? So you heard it here first, breaking. So that's essentially the idea here, is that you're changing the culture of someone's home, right? So that's where this new identity comes in. If you think about the culture of, like, let's say this, last year's Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus this year's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What do you think was different about last year's culture than this year's culture?
Accountability.
Accountability. What else?
A standard of excellence.
Standard of excellence. What else?
Winning Super Bowls.
Winning Super Bowls. What else?
I would say that, simply put, you don't have Tom Brady, you don't have Antonio Brown, you don't have, Leonard Fournette. I think that you don't expect certain, the expectations are probably higher too.
Yeah, expectations are higher. What else? I just want to see how far you can go with this.
No, I 100% right, because.
But it's completely different, right? Like it's a new culture, but it's also a new identity. So if you looked at from a fly on the wall of last year's team versus this year's team, completely different.
Yeah, and even going back to that family situation, the culture of, hey, if you have a culture of arguing in your family, like that's just like the culture, right? It may stem from something you have no idea what it is, right? It may stem from, my situation is when I'm arguing with Megan, sometimes it's very much because I've dropped the ball on something. We haven't had clear communication on things, and whatever it may be, right? If I'm late for work, that makes her feel like, oh, okay, well, is he choosing work over me, and things like that, right? But if I have the culture of, hey, we're gonna, I'm gonna show up on time. I get off work at this certain time. I have this freedom to do these things. I have less arguments. So my culture changes at home. My family dynamic changes at home. What's acceptable, at home totally changes. So it all compounds off of each other. So it's pretty dope.
And to pivot this over to us and how does this work in the business world versus the family world. So essentially, when we sell an identity, this is what I mean by this is, have you ever heard the phrase perception is reality?
Of course.
Okay. And sorry, I didn't realize it was that common. I thought I made it up, but I guess not.
You're so stupid.
Two in the hand. You ever heard that one?
Yeah, two in the head, one in the bush.
That's opposite. One in the hand, two in the bush.
Oh, sorry. I haven't heard that one either.
Gotcha. So essentially, with selling an identity this is the same thing as what you guys are doing as contractors. You're selling this transformation. You're selling this new family culture. For us, whenever we build a new website for somebody or we sell that or, they get like the new system and stuff, most contractors, maybe 95%, whenever we ask them, hey, what's the biggest issue in the business? They always say, I got to work on my processes. I got to work on my systems. What systems? What processes? Oh, the systems and the processes. Right. Which one? They don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. And we use this as this blanket excuse. I can't do anything. Oh, I can't do this. I got to get my systems in place first. But we all know I got to get my systems in place first is the equivalent of, I got to talk to my financial planner or my accountant when you talk to a homeowner.
Yeah. It's
just a BS excuse. And we know what they're essentially doing is they're saying, nah, I'm good. So,
well, not only that, let me take a step back. I think that it's just sometimes a misunderstanding of what needs to happen first. Like when I hear the systems situation, sometimes I very much think of it as, well, this person just isn't, I feel a little bit bad because they don't know what they need to attack first for them to be successful. I feel like they are juggling so many different things and so many different things are now being thrown to the wayside and not being taken care of. So I think I know 100% that when you change your identity, you live up to that identity.
Right. And that's what we're getting at here is, I put a post out in Reber's 100K group today that talks about making decisions as your future self. So let's use a weight example first. Chris, if you're 300 pounds and you're trying to get down to 200 pounds, do you have to think and act like a 300-pound man or a 200-pound man?
Obviously 200-pound man.
Correct. So when we're trying to go from $500,000 to $1 million as a business, do we have to make decisions like a $500,000 business or make decisions as if we're already $1 million business?
$1 million business. And that's what many people have a hard time doing is because they fail to realize that the thought processes that got them to this point will not get them to the next point.
The foundation of some stuff will, so you can build on that. But when we set goals, I don't know how we're going to hit them. I know we are, but I know what got us to the million won't get us to 2.5, right? Or at least the foundation will. But from where we were at the beginning of 2020 to where we're at the end of 2020 was so different that the identity of the company was completely changed.
Yep, 100%.
So when it comes to business, if you make these big time goals, which I'm a huge fan of, half the time you don't know how you're going to hit it. So if you limit yourself and say, well, I did $1 million last year and this year I just want to do 1.1 because I know it works, that's fine. You're going to go up by a little bit. But if you say, screw it, last year I did $1 million, this year I want to do 1.5. And it's like, well, how do the numbers work out? Well, honestly, I have no idea how we're going to get there, but we're going to figure it out. We had a question last night in one of the calls, which was, well, how do you get people who are not tech savvy to fill out information on your website? And we're just like, honestly, you just make sure they just tell them to. Like, they'll tell them to figure it out.
If you think about this too, I don't really know a actual accurate description, but what if the VA? What if the VA said, hey, in order for us to go forward with your claim, you got to take a picture of your knee.
Right.
Well, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. And most people, and that's the thing is, what happens with a lot of people is they say, I need to get my systems and processes down. And then they say, well, I don't, if I already knew them, I wouldn't be asking how I go about doing it. But what that really looks like is if you do not know how to problem solve like that, don't start your own business. Like I saw somebody talked about, I think it was like Elon Musk, and like somebody asked him the question, and I don't know if this is real or not. I saw it on the internet, but it was like, how do you, what do you say to motivate an entrepreneur? And his response was, if you need motivation, don't become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with this is if you need the literally step-by-step on everything, don't start your own business because you need to create structure. So a lot of times it's not because like you're not smart enough to figure out the steps. It's because you're so stuck in this solopreneur identity. You haven't leveled up to like, okay, let me pretend like I got 2 employees. Let me start to make the moves of somebody that has 2 employees. And guess what? Through law of attraction, through you figuring out the how, that's how you'll do it. But if you're always stuck on like, well, what's the step-by-step? The issue is not you don't know the step-by-step, because if you were really motivated by it, if you couldn't figure out how to use your phone and, like you had to get an operation on your knee and you had to go to the VA and they said, hey, you can't get this operation without getting this done, you're not going to go, well, I tried.
Yeah.
That's it. I did my best. I guess I'll just deal with this bum knee for the rest of my life. You're going to figure it out.
Yeah. Limiting beliefs, right?
It's a lot of limiting beliefs. So when it comes to this identity shift, I hear this a lot of like, oh, I need to get this in place, I need to get this in place, and how do I do that? And a lot of times what you need is you don't need to figure out the step-by-step before making your first move. You need to set a big goal or create a new identity, and that's where we come in and we say like, okay, look, when you have this website, perception is reality. The way that your customers are going to look at you, it's going to be really freaking professional. And when you are viewed as really professional, you essentially are dressing for the job that you want. You're now going to up-level everything else in your business, because the last thing that we want to do is let a customer down who comes in with this high perception of, man, they have their stuff together, they got their processes in place, they do beautiful work. You don't want to then do shitty work. So you're going to make sure that you put out the right product. And you want to make sure you have the right product. You have to have the right team in place. So now your hiring process is going to shift a little bit differently. And when your hiring process shifts a little bit differently, you're attracting the right people, which builds the right culture. And the right culture allows you to step out of the business and work more on it. So essentially, yes, what we do is a lot of websites and systems and stuff like that. But what we really help you out with is it's a new identity, because when you get this good pressure on yourself and the way that people perceive you is one way, you don't want to go about the negative side of it, or you don't want to like say, oh yeah, I know what you saw online was like really nice, but we're actually not that good. Like you're going to live up to it.
Yeah, we drop the ball when it comes to communication. We drop the ball when it comes to being professional. We drop the ball when it comes to being honest. We drop the ball on all these things. No, like we have the ball in our court.
And you're going to figure out a way to put the systems in place and hire the right people. And like if you book a job that you're like, look, I need another 3 people and the job's in 2 months. Do you think if you have a really good job in 2 months, you could figure out a way to hire 3 people?
When you go to work at Google, right? It's this whole identity thing. You go to work at Google, you feel like, hey, I got to have my stuff together. Mm-hmm. You know what? I probably can't show up 15 minutes late. I probably can't just drive up in some dunker car and just have it smoking as I walk through the door. I got to have my stuff together. Mm-hmm. Well, why don't people think that about your business? Why don't your employees think, hey, I got to have my stuff together if I want to work for this company, because I know the value that they provide to people on a consistent basis. Why don't you have your stuff together? Why are you telling me right now, hey, you know what? I got an Excel spreadsheet where I get this stuff done, and I really don't keep it up to date. I can't tell you right now how much money I'm making. I can't tell you right now what I did revenue-wise. I can't tell you, what's going on here. It's because you have an identity right now where it's okay for that to be okay, because you got a lot of stuff going on. But if you know, hey, I'm the best damn business in my area for what I do. I take care of my customers. I have my stuff together. I make sure I know my numbers. I make sure I charge the right things. I make sure I'm prompt in talking to the customers. I follow with them the proper ways. I have awesome employees. I hire the right way. I'm consistently available to do the right things. My calendar's open in the sense of I take the jobs that I want to take, and I don't just pick and choose certain things. I've niched down to do exactly what I want to do because of the fact that that's what I'm good at. I don't have this situation where I have this scarcity mindset that I got to do everything, because that's who I am. That's my identity. I'm the best damn person at doing what I do. So why can't that be you?
And a lot of times you feel this, but you don't know what the right steps always are, because you're like, well, how do I do it? And that's where you either need to, 1, come up with enough motivation within to do it, or 2, change the environment somehow. Because that's the only 2 reasons why anything changes. And think about like with, like if you want to lose weight.
And think about change is the only catalyst for growth.
Yeah. And if you want to lose weight, so you either, one, have something internally where you get really motivated, or two, you have like a health scare or you have a wedding coming up, or like there's an external reason outside your mind of why you want to lose weight.
Do you think about push and pull when it comes to motivation?
Yeah.
That's 100% how I think about it. Like I think about right now visually seeing myself with the big ass boulder going up a mountain, and I'm looking at it along along the lines of my motivation is my push, right? Or like, because I feel like motivation is like that fleeting situation. It's sometimes I'm motivated, sometimes I'm not, right? Mm-hmm. That's that push. Well, that push can't get me all the way up to the top of that mountain. That's just me pushing. I mean, there's some days which I got a lot of energy and I push hard. But most days it's not the motivation that's actually getting me there. I got this pull. I got another rope that's tied to the top of that mountain that's pulling that boulder up that is actually driving me for the most days. Mm-hmm. That's my identity. That's where I want to be. That's exactly where I need to be.
Yep.
So that's what's getting me there. Me the fear or the pain or the embarrassment of not being my true self and not getting to exactly where I deserve to be, that is way greater than any of the stuff I got to do right now that I need to do in order for me to get there.
And that's the whole idea here, is that it's, your motivation gets you so far. Your motivation gets you to 1 million. Can we do 1 million again this year? Yeah. But we need a pull. We need a new identity to get us to 2.5. And that's the same thing that when I talk to contractors over the phone, it's this identity shift, where they go from being nervous, being very, I've never spent this much before, I've never invested this much into myself, to like, okay, well, let's pretend that you hit your goal. Let's pretend that, let's say you're like in our boat. Like, let's say you want to go from 1 million to 2.5 in your contracting business, right? Somebody who's 2.5 million, are they really going to be, like a $2.5 million company owner? Are they really going to be nervous about this right now? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, great. So what's stopping you from moving forward? Because it sounds like right now you're trying to go 200 miles an hour on the highway, but you're still stuck with a Prius engine. So either A, we need to reshift our goals. So we don't want to go 200 miles an hour. We want to go 75, or we need to upgrade the engine from a Prius to, I don't know, a V8 or something like that. That'll get you that 200 miles an hour. So one of those has to change. You choose which one do you want. And it's scary. And most people will say, okay, let's change the identity because I need to mentally get over this. I need to mentally become this $2.5 million company, because if I'm stuck at the $1 million identity, then you're going to be stuck. It's the same way of like with your family. If you want to have a family that's really close knit, it's kind of tough to like have a really tight knit, a close tight knit family without changing any environment. If you just can't walk up like, hey, son, daughter, let's hang out. You either let's go on a vacation, changes the environment. Let's get our kitchen remodeled so it's more open space, changes the environment. So you either have to have a massive amount of motivation within, or you have to change your environment, which then, does that pull factor, which is what Chris is talking about. So that is when you get this new identity, everything else falls into place. Who you interact with, how you hire, your systems, everything's more documented. And if you're really an entrepreneur, you figure stuff out along the way. You don't, like I know everybody's got a different DISC assessment, and somebody who's like a type C is going to be more analytical and a little bit more cautious. But if you're really somebody who wants to build this business and problem solve and stuff like that, then you figure stuff out, because that's what an entrepreneur does. Is they problem solve, they figure it out.
It's like to have a massive change in results, it's foolish to think you don't need to have a massive change in like inputs.
Yeah. So that's what identity selling is, guys. It's essentially stepping away from a commodity, not just selling a product or a widget or this or that, and going deep into, hey, this is going to transform the culture of your family. This is going to transform how you feel about, living in your home.
Yep, and that's why you got to ask those questions when you're talking to people about how they see their lives when they have this new kitchen.
Yeah.
So they can imagine it themselves, so that you're not totally in blind of what the new identity that they want to have.
Yeah, exactly. So if you guys want to get more engaged in this, we have a whole identity in our Common Sense Contracting Facebook group, which is these are people that are ready to celebrate client wins, because when you love your people more than you love your product, you're going to attract more of your ideal client. But also we do all these trainings. We talk about how to actually up level, how to shift your identity, how to make those transformations in not only your clients' lives, but also your family's lives. So that's head over to Facebook, Common Sense Contracting. Everybody that I talk to, like I'll talk to somebody on the phone and they'll be like, hey, like just real quick, like love what you guys are doing over there. So that's my way of saying like, this is not just us like blowing smoke up our own butts. This is other contractors saying like, this is awesome stuff. So if you're not there, you know, I don't want you to miss out on this stuff because again, like this stuff, even if you don't implement, but you start to like just listen and kind of like shift that mindset, you will make a lot more money and be way more happier doing what you're doing.
All right, let's do it.
All right, Common Sense Contracting. Thank you guys very much.